What if I told you that one of the most powerful anti-aging switches in your body can be activated in just one day, not with a pill, not with a complicated diet, and not with an expensive treatment, but with a very simple metabolic reset? Now, I know that sounds surprising, especially for seniors who have been told for decades that the key to health is simply eat less and exercise more. But here's what many people discover as they age. The strategies that worked at 30 simply stop working at 60 or 70. You might be eating healthy, you might be walking every day, and yet the stubborn fat around the belly refuses to move. Energy drops, recovery slows, and the body just doesn't seem to repair itself the way it once did. So what's really going on? Here's what's happening inside the body. As we age, two major biological systems begin to slow down. First, our stem cell activity declines. Stem cells are the repair crew of your body. They help regenerate tissues, support the immune system, and replace damaged cells. Second, the body becomes metabolically stuck in fat storage mode, largely driven by insulin resistance and constant feeding. And when these two things happen together, something important breaks down. The body stops repairing efficiently and starts accumulating fat and inflammation. But here's the fascinating part. Research in metabolic science shows that short periods without food, strategic fasting, can flip the body back into repair mode. During these windows, the body activates processes like autophagy, which is essentially cellular cleanup, removing damaged parts of cells so they can function better. Even more interesting, research from stem cell biology suggests that a fasting period followed by refeeding can rejuvenate aging stem cells, restoring their ability to regenerate blood and immune cells in aging organisms. In simple terms, when you give your body a break from constant digestion, it shifts from storage mode to repair mode. And that's exactly the switch we're going to talk about today. Because the strategy I'm going to share is something many people overlook. It's not extreme. It's not dangerous when done correctly. And for many people, it can start working in as little as one day. Now, to be clear, this isn't magic, but when you understand the physiology, insulin, fat metabolism, and cellular repair, the results start to make sense. And today I'm going to break it down in a very practical way so you can decide whether this approach is right for you. I'm Dr. Michael Anderson, a health specialist, and every day I create content like this to help seniors stay fit, healthy, and full of energy. My goal is to give you simple, science-backed tools you can actually use in daily life. Let's start with the first major metabolic mistake that quietly blocks both fat burning and cellular repair for many seniors: constant eating. Now, this isn't something most people do intentionally. It's simply what modern nutrition advice has encouraged for decades. Eat breakfast, have a snack mid-morning, lunch, another snack, dinner, maybe something small before bed, and on the surface this seems harmless. But when we look at what's happening physiologically inside the body, the picture changes completely. Here's what's really going on inside your body. Every time you eat, your pancreas releases insulin. Insulin's job is simple. It helps move glucose from the bloodstream into cells. But insulin also has another very important function. It tells your body to store energy. In other words, insulin is a storage hormone. When insulin is elevated, two things happen simultaneously. First, fat burning shuts down. Second, cellular repair processes slow down. Let me explain this with a simple analogy. Think of your body like a house that has two different modes: renovation mode and delivery mode. When delivery trucks keep arriving every hour, groceries, packages, supplies, the workers inside the house are busy moving things around. They don't have time to repair the walls, clean out broken equipment, or renovate the structure. But when deliveries stop for a while, something different happens. The workers finally get time to clean, repair, and rebuild. Your metabolism works in a very similar way. When you are constantly eating, your body is in processing mode, digesting food, storing energy, and managing blood sugar. But when you create a window without food, insulin drops and the body shifts into repair mode. And this is where things get interesting. Around 12 hours without food, the liver begins shifting its fuel source from glucose to stored fat. This process is called metabolic switching. Instead of burning incoming carbohydrates, the body starts accessing fat stores. Then something even more powerful begins. Cellular repair pathways start activating, particularly a process called autophagy, which is essentially the body's internal recycling system. Damaged proteins, dysfunctional mitochondria, and cellular debris begin getting broken down and removed. This is critical for aging cells. As we get older, our cells accumulate damage over time. Think of it like clutter building up in a garage. If nothing ever gets cleaned out, the system stops working efficiently. Autophagy is the biological cleanup crew. Research from aging and metabolism studies shows that fasting periods stimulate autophagy pathways, which help improve cellular efficiency, reduce inflammation, and support tissue repair. But there's another hormone involved here that many people overlook: human growth hormone, often called HGH. During fasting windows, growth hormone levels can increase significantly. This hormone plays a key role in preserving lean muscle while the body burns fat. It also supports tissue regeneration and metabolic health. So when fasting is done correctly, you're not simply skipping meals. You are activating an entirely different metabolic program, one that prioritizes fat burning, cellular repair, and metabolic rejuvenation. Now, here's the important point. Most people never stay in this repair state long enough to experience the benefits because they eat again before the switch happens. They snack at 10 a.m. They drink sugary coffee at noon. They graze throughout the afternoon, and every time insulin rises again, the repair process shuts off. This is why the timing of eating matters just as much as the food itself. If this explanation is helpful so far, consider subscribing to the channel. I post content like this every day to help you understand how your metabolism really works, so you can take control of your health naturally. Because once you understand the biology, the strategy becomes much clearer. Now let's talk about the metabolic switch that begins to happen when your body goes longer without food, usually somewhere between 12 and 24 hours. Because this is where the physiology really starts to change. Here's what's really going on inside your body. Under normal conditions, your body prefers to run on glucose, which mainly comes from carbohydrates. Every meal replenishes this fuel supply. But when you stop eating for a period of time, your body must find another source of energy. And this is where the liver comes in. Your liver stores glucose in the form of glycogen, essentially a reserve fuel tank. But this tank is relatively small. For most people, those glycogen stores begin to decline significantly after about 12 to 18 hours without food. When that happens, the body has to switch fuel systems. Instead of running primarily on glucose, the body begins to rely on stored fat. This transition is often called the metabolic switch. Let me explain this with a simple analogy. Imagine your body is like a hybrid car. Most of the time it runs on gasoline. That's glucose from food. But when the gasoline tank starts running low, the car automatically switches to its backup electric battery. In your body, that backup battery is body fat. When glycogen drops, the liver begins converting fatty acids into molecules called ketones. These ketones become an alternative fuel source for the brain, muscles, and organs. And once this switch happens, something important occurs. The body becomes much more efficient at burning stored fat. But this metabolic shift isn't only about weight loss. It also signals a series of cellular pathways associated with repair, longevity, and regeneration. For example, during fasting, key nutrient-sensing pathways, particularly AMPK activation and reduced mTOR signaling, begin to shift the body toward maintenance and repair. These pathways help cells adapt to low-energy conditions and increase their efficiency. And interestingly, fasting periods appear to influence stem cell behavior as well. Research examining fasting during Ramadan found that healthy adults experienced an increase in circulating hematopoietic stem and progenitor cells, which are involved in immune system regeneration and tissue repair. In other words, when the body experiences controlled metabolic stress, like a temporary fasting window, it can stimulate biological signals associated with regeneration. But here's the nuance most people miss. The fasting period is only half of the equation. Some fascinating research from stem cell biology suggests that the largest burst of stem cell regeneration actually occurs during the refeeding phase, when nutrients return after the fast. Think of fasting as preparing the soil, and eating again as planting the seeds for regeneration. During fasting, the body clears damaged components and conserves energy. Then when nutrients arrive again, especially amino acids, vitamins, and minerals, stem cells become highly active, rebuilding tissues and renewing immune cells. This is why the timing of eating and fasting cycles matters so much. It's not just about how much you eat, it's about when you eat. And this explains something many seniors notice when they experiment with longer fasting windows. They often report easier fat loss, improved mental clarity, reduced cravings, and more stable energy. Because once the metabolic switch flips, the body is no longer chasing constant glucose spikes. Instead, it becomes metabolically flexible, capable of burning fat efficiently while supporting cellular repair. Now, if this explanation is helping you see your metabolism differently, consider subscribing to the channel. I share research-based strategies like this regularly to help people take control of their health naturally. Because the next concept we're going to discuss is one of the most fascinating biological processes connected to fasting. It's called cellular cleanup, and it may be one of the most powerful anti-aging mechanisms in the human body. Now let's talk about one of the most fascinating biological processes connected to fasting, a process that many longevity researchers consider one of the body's most powerful anti-aging tools. It's called autophagy. And understanding this process helps explain why short fasting periods can have such profound effects on cellular health. Here's what's really going on inside your body. Every single day, your cells experience damage. Proteins become misfolded. Mitochondria, the energy generators inside cells, wear out. Inflammatory molecules accumulate. Think of it like running a factory for decades without ever cleaning the machinery. Eventually, broken parts begin piling up. Efficiency drops. And that's exactly what happens inside aging cells. But your body has a built-in solution for this problem, a biological recycling system called autophagy. The term literally means self-eating, but don't let that sound alarming, because it's actually one of the most important maintenance systems in the human body. Autophagy allows cells to identify damaged components, break them down, and recycle the useful parts to build new, healthier structures. In other words, it's cellular housekeeping. Let me explain this with a simple analogy. Imagine your home has a cleaning crew that comes in once a week. They remove broken furniture, throw away trash, organize the space, and repair things that have worn down. After the cleanup, the house functions much better. Autophagy works the same way. But here's the critical detail most people never hear about. This cleanup process doesn't run efficiently when you are constantly eating. Because when nutrients are abundant, the body shifts toward growth and storage. Cellular cleanup becomes a lower priority. However, when nutrients temporarily drop, such as during a fasting period, the body activates maintenance pathways. It essentially says, "We're not receiving new supplies right now. Let's clean up what we already have." And that's when autophagy begins ramping up. This process was so significant in biology that it led to a Nobel Prize in 2016 for research explaining how autophagy functions in human cells. What researchers discovered is that autophagy plays a major role in removing dysfunctional mitochondria, reducing cellular inflammation, improving metabolic efficiency, supporting longevity and tissue repair, and for seniors, this becomes especially important. Because as we age, autophagy naturally declines. Cells accumulate more damage, inflammation rises, and tissues lose their ability to regenerate as efficiently. But fasting appears to reactivate these cleanup pathways. And that may be one reason many people report improvements in metabolic health, insulin sensitivity, and fat loss when they incorporate controlled fasting windows. Now here's something even more interesting. Autophagy doesn't just improve cellular health. It may also help create the environment needed for stem cells to function better. Think of stem cells as the body's repair engineers. But if the environment around them is filled with damaged proteins and inflammatory debris, their ability to repair tissues becomes limited. When autophagy clears out that cellular clutter, it essentially creates a cleaner workspace for regeneration to occur. And this is why many longevity researchers believe fasting cycles may support healthier aging. It's not simply about burning calories, it's about restoring the body's natural maintenance systems. If this explanation is helping you understand your body in a new way, consider subscribing to the channel. I share practical, science-based strategies like this every day to help people take control of their health. Because in the next section, we're going to talk about something many people completely overlook, and it may be the most important part of the entire process, the phase where stem cells actually begin rebuilding and regenerating tissues. Now let's talk about a part of this process that most people completely overlook. And interestingly, it may be the most important phase for stem cell regeneration. It's not the fasting period itself. It's what happens when you eat again. Because here's what the research shows. Fasting prepares the body for repair, but refeeding triggers the rebuilding process. Here's what's really going on inside your body. During the fasting window, several important things occur. Insulin drops. Fat burning increases. Autophagy begins clearing damaged cellular components. Inflammation signals decrease. You can think of this stage as clearing the construction site. The body is removing debris and preparing the environment for repair. But regeneration requires raw materials, amino acids, minerals, vitamins, and energy. And those nutrients arrive when you begin eating again. Let me explain this with a simple analogy. Imagine you're renovating a house. First, you remove the damaged drywall, broken pipes, and worn-out flooring. That's the cleanup phase. But the house doesn't improve until new materials arrive: wood, tools, paint, and wiring. That's the rebuilding phase. Your metabolism works in a very similar way. Fasting clears damaged structures. Refeeding provides the building blocks for repair. And this is when stem cells become highly active. Stem cells are essentially undifferentiated repair cells. They have the ability to transform into many different types of tissues depending on what the body needs: immune cells, muscle cells, and other specialized cells. Research examining fasting cycles has shown that after a fasting period, the refeeding phase can stimulate stem cell activity involved in immune regeneration and tissue repair. In practical terms, this means the body becomes temporarily primed for rebuilding. But here's where many people make a critical mistake. They end their fasting window with high sugar, refined carbohydrates, or processed foods. and this sends the wrong metabolic signal. Instead of supporting regeneration, the body experiences a rapid spike in blood sugar and insulin, which can increase inflammation and blunt many of the metabolic benefits. So if you want to support the repair process properly, the first meal after fasting matters enormously. Think of it as the signal that tells your body what kind of rebuilding program to run. Here's a simple guideline many metabolic health experts recommend. Break your fast with nutrient-dense, protein-rich foods. For example, eggs with healthy fats like olive oil or avocado, wild fish such as salmon or sardines, high-quality protein like chicken or grass-fed beef, low-glycemic vegetables such as spinach, broccoli, or zucchini. This combination provides amino acids for tissue repair, healthy fats for metabolic stability, micronutrients that support mitochondrial function. And importantly, this type of meal produces a controlled insulin response rather than a large spike. This keeps the body in a stable metabolic state while still providing the nutrients needed for regeneration. Another factor that supports this rebuilding phase is adequate protein intake. As we age, muscle protein synthesis becomes less efficient. This phenomenon is sometimes called anabolic resistance. That means seniors often require slightly higher protein intake to stimulate muscle maintenance and repair. Protein provides essential amino acids like leucine, which activate cellular pathways involved in tissue rebuilding. So the fasting cycle becomes a two-part biological rhythm. Phase 1. Clean up damaged cells and shift metabolism toward fat burning. Phase 2. Provide the nutrients needed to rebuild healthier tissues. When these phases work together, the body becomes far more efficient at maintaining metabolic health. If this explanation is helpful so far, consider subscribing to the channel. I share strategies like this every day to help people understand how their bodies actually work, and how small changes can create powerful improvements in long-term health. Because now that we understand the biology, the next step is to make it practical. Now that we understand the biology, insulin, fat metabolism, autophagy, and the refeeding phase, let's turn this into something practical. Because theory is interesting, but what really matters is what you can actually do tomorrow. So let's walk through a simple experiment I often recommend called the one-day metabolic reset. The goal here isn't extreme fasting. It's simply to give the body a long enough window to activate its repair systems. Think of this as pressing the metabolic reset button. Here's a simple structure many people can try. First, finish dinner earlier in the evening, ideally around 6 or 7 p.m. Then allow your body to rest overnight without food. No late-night snacking, no sugary drinks, just water, herbal tea, or black coffee if needed. By the time you wake up the next morning, you've already completed 12 hours of fasting without doing anything difficult. That alone already allows insulin levels to begin dropping and the body to start accessing stored fat. Now here's the key step. Instead of eating immediately in the morning, extend the fasting window for a few more hours. For many people, this means waiting until 10 a.m. or noon before the first meal. This creates roughly a 16-hour fasting window, and for many individuals, that's enough time to begin activating fat burning and cellular repair pathways. During this fasting period, focus on 3 simple things: hydration, light movement, and low stress. Drink water with a pinch of sea salt or a squeeze of lemon. Go for a gentle walk outside. Avoid intense exercise if you're new to fasting, because the goal is metabolic flexibility, not exhaustion. Now, something interesting often happens around hour 14 or 15. Hunger begins fading, mental clarity increases, and energy levels stabilize. This is usually a sign the body is transitioning toward fat metabolism. Remember the hybrid car analogy from earlier. The body is switching fuel systems. Now, when you break the fast, this is where quality matters. Start with a nutrient-dense meal that includes protein, healthy fats, and fiber. For example, eggs cooked in olive oil with sautéed vegetables, salmon with avocado and leafy greens, chicken with broccoli and olive oil. This kind of meal provides the building blocks your body needs for regeneration without causing a large glucose spike, and that helps maintain the metabolic benefits you've created during the fasting window. Then later in the day, you can eat a second balanced meal, ideally finishing dinner again around 6 or 7 p.m. This completes the cycle. In simple terms, the one-day reset looks like this. Dinner at 6-7 p.m. Overnight fasting. First meal around 10-12 p.m. Balanced whole foods. Dinner again in the early evening. One full day of this pattern often creates noticeable changes. People commonly report less bloating, more stable energy, reduced cravings, and sometimes a small drop in water weight. But the deeper benefit is metabolic. You've allowed your body to practice switching between fuel systems. And that flexibility is one of the most important factors in long-term metabolic health. If this protocol sounds useful to you, consider subscribing to the channel. I share simple, research-based strategies like this regularly to help people improve their metabolism naturally. Because before you try this approach, there's one more thing we need to discuss, and it's extremely important. The mistakes that stop fasting from working, or make it harder than it needs to be. Once you understand these pitfalls, the entire strategy becomes much easier to apply safely and effectively. Now, before you try the one-day reset we just discussed, we need to talk about something extremely important. Because while fasting can be powerful, many people unknowingly do it in a way that cancels the benefits, and in some cases, it even makes people feel worse. So let's walk through the most common mistakes that stop fasting from working, especially for seniors. Here's what's really going on inside your body when fasting goes wrong. The first mistake is under-eating protein during the eating window. Remember earlier we discussed the rebuilding phase. Your body clears damaged cells during fasting, but it rebuilds tissue during refeeding. And the main raw material for that rebuilding process is amino acids from protein. As we age, the body becomes less responsive to protein signals. This phenomenon is called anabolic resistance. In simple terms, seniors often require more protein per meal to stimulate muscle repair and maintenance. If someone fasts for long periods but then eats very little protein afterward, the body doesn't get the building blocks it needs. And over time, that can lead to muscle loss rather than fat loss. A helpful guideline many metabolic health experts suggest is aiming for 25-40 grams of protein in the first meal after a fast. That could look like 3 to 4 eggs, salmon or sardines, chicken or lean meat, Greek yogurt with nuts. This helps activate muscle protein synthesis and supports tissue regeneration. Now, the second mistake is breaking the fast with sugar or refined carbohydrates. This is extremely common. Someone fasts all morning, and then the first meal becomes a bagel, fruit juice, sweet cereal, or pastries. From a metabolic standpoint, this creates a rapid glucose spike followed by a large insulin surge. Instead of gradually transitioning out of the fasting state, the body experiences a metabolic roller coaster. And this can trigger energy crashes, increased hunger later in the day, and reduced fat burning. The goal is to break the fast gently, with stable nutrients.